Welcome back, campers, to the Campfire Files. Before we get into tonight's campfire story, I want to give a shout out to every camper, young and old, that join me around the fire every week. I appreciate all of you very, very much. And if you aren't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more tales, scares, and frights. Out here, the fire is our only light. Beyond it, the woods stretch endless, and the mountains rise like dark walls against the sky. The Appalachians are old, older than the roads, older than the towns, older even than the names we've given them, and in their shadows, something waits. For generations, hunters, hikers, and families have returned from these hills with stories. Stories of eyes glowing just beyond the tree line. Stories of footsteps too heavy to belong to any man. Stories of a figure that vanishes when you try to follow. Some say it's just a tale, a legend meant to scare children from wandering too far. But others will tell you they've heard it, they've smelled it, they've seen it, and when they talk about it, their voices drop and their eyes shift toward the dark, as if the very name might call it closer. So listen carefully tonight, because the story you're about to hear may sound like folklore, but out here in the Appalachians, folklore has teeth. I've always believed there are places in this world that never belong to us. Places too old, too wild, too unforgiving to be tamed. And if you've ever stood in the heart of the Appalachian mountains, you know what I mean. The air feels heavier there, the trees grow taller, and the silence between them carries a weight you can't explain. I was 24 the summer it happened. A friend of mine, Caleb, convinced me to spend a long weekend hiking and camping deep in the mountains, well past where most people dare to go. He called it an adventure, a way to get off the grid for real. At first, I laughed it off. I'd done plenty of camping before, but nothing prepared me for how different it felt, stepping off the familiar trails and into the untouched parts of those woods. The first day was almost peaceful. We set up camp near a stream, built a fire, and watched the sun vanish behind endless ridges. The sound of rushing water mixed with the hum of crickets and the occasional call of an owl. For a while, I thought maybe Caleb had been right. Maybe this was exactly what I needed, a break from everything. But as the night stretched on, I began to notice how dark it really was out there. Not the kind of darkness you find near towns, where distant lights blur the sky, but a darkness so complete it swallows the stars. Our fire felt fragile, like a single match against a black ocean. And in that dark, every snap of a twig, every shift of the wind made my skin prickle. Caleb teased me for being jumpy, but even he grew quieter as the night dragged on. There's something about the Appalachian silence that gets under your skin. The forest doesn't just grow still. It feels like it's listening. That first night, just before we crawled into our tents, I thought I heard something far off in the distance. A sound that didn't belong to any bird or coyote I'd ever heard. A deep, resonant knock echoing once through the trees. Caleb froze when it happened. He didn't say a word, just stared into the darkness beyond the firelight. I asked him what it was, but he shook his head like he didn't want to answer. A moment later, He forced a laugh and said it was probably just a branch falling, but the look in his eyes told me he didn't believe it. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I started to drift off, I thought I heard something moving just outside the circle of firelight, a shuffle of leaves, the crunch of a step, and always that heavy feeling, like something was out there, just beyond where I could see. By morning, I told myself it was nothing, just nerves, just my mind playing tricks in an unfamiliar place. But in my gut, I knew better. Something had been out there, watching, waiting, and it was only the beginning. The second day started like nothing had happened. The morning sun burned away the mist, and the forest almost seemed alive with sound again. Birds chattering, insects buzzing, the stream rushing at our campsite. I almost convinced myself that the knock I'd heard the night before was just a tree giving way somewhere far off. Caleb was quieter than usual, though. He'd been all smiles the day before, but that morning he kept glancing into the trees like something might still be out there. When I finally asked him what was wrong, he shrugged it off and said, "The mountains have their own language. Takes a while to get used to it." We packed up camp and hiked deeper into the ridge. The trails grew less obvious the farther we went, the underbrush thicker, the ground steeper. By late afternoon, we hadn't seen another person in hours. It was just us, the endless canopy, and the occasional break of sunlight that filtered through the leaves. That's when I started noticing strange things. At first, it was just little details. Tree trunks with deep grooves running down them, higher up than any bear could have reached. Rocks stacked in odd formations, balanced in ways that looked almost intentional. Even the smell in the air seemed wrong, faint but foul, like wet fur and rot carried on the breeze. When I pointed it out, Caleb just shook his head. Deer rub against trees. Hunters stack rocks. You're overthinking it. But I caught the way his voice wavered, like he was trying harder to convince himself than me. By the time the sun dipped low, we set camp again in a clearing near the ridgeline. The forest grew quieter as dusk settled in. Too quiet. No birdsong, no crickets, not even the usual buzz of mosquitoes, just silence. That night, as we sat by the fire, we heard it again, that same knock, this time closer. Caleb froze, his eyes locked on the tree line. A long pause, then another knock, louder, sharper, echoing through the stillness. He muttered something under his breath I didn't catch. I asked him again what it was, but he didn't answer. His face was pale, his jaw tight. I tried to laugh it off, saying maybe someone else was camping nearby, but the words felt hollow the moment they left my mouth. We were miles off any trail. We hadn't seen a single person all day. Then came the footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate, crushing leaves and twigs in the dark just beyond where the firelight reached. They circled us, always staying just out of sight. Every so often, the sound would stop completely, as if whoever or whatever it was wanted us to know it was there. I gripped my flashlight, but Caleb shook his head violently when I moved to turn it on. "Don't," he whispered. His voice cracked on the word. The fire popped, the silence closed in, and I swear I could feel eyes on me, watching, measuring. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I couldn't. By the time dawn crept over the ridge, I felt like I'd been awake for days. My nerves were frayed, my body heavy, but my mind sharp with fear. Caleb didn't look much better. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands shaking as he tried to strike a flame for coffee. Neither of us spoke about what we'd heard that night. We didn't have to. We broke camp quickly and decided to head higher into the mountains, aiming for a ridge Caleb had marked on his map. He said the view was worth the climb, that we'd be able to see the whole valley spread out beneath us. I wanted to argue, to say we should head back, but something about his determination stopped me. Maybe he was trying to prove something. Maybe I was too. The hike was brutal. Steep inclines, loose rocks, thick underbrush. The deeper we went, the less the forest felt welcoming. It wasn't just the isolation anymore. It was the weight. Like the trees were closing in, pressing us toward some unseen edge. Around midday, we stopped to rest. That's when I saw it. At first I thought it was just a shadow moving between the trees, a trick of the light, but then it stepped clear just for a moment, and my breath caught in my throat. Tall, taller than any man I'd ever seen, broad shoulders, arms that hung low, and a frame covered in dark, matted hair. I couldn't make out its face. It was too far, too quick. But I saw the way it turned its head, the way it was looking at us. And then it was gone, vanished back into the tree line as if it had never been there at all. I must have gone pale, because Caleb didn't even ask what I'd seen. His jaw clenched, his eyes darted around the clearing, and he whispered, "You saw it too, didn't you?" I nodded. Neither of us spoke after that. We just packed up and pushed forward, though every step felt heavier. Every sound made me flinch. The wind through the branches sounded like breathing. The crack of a twig sent my heart racing. By late afternoon, the forest fell silent again. No birds, no bugs. Not even the sound of our own footsteps seemed right, muffled as if the ground itself was holding its breath. That's when the smell hit. It came suddenly, thick and overwhelming, the stench of rot, musk, and wet earth all at once. It burned the back of my throat and made my stomach twist. Caleb gagged and pulled his shirt over his face, but it didn't help. The smell was everywhere. Then, from the ridge above us came a sound I'll never forget. A howl, low and guttural at first, rising higher until it shook the trees. It wasn't a coyote. It wasn't a bear. It was something deeper, heavier, filled with a rage that vibrated in my chest. We froze. Neither of us dared move. And in that silence after the howl faded, I swear we heard it again. The heavy knock of wood against wood. Closer this time. Much closer. We made camp that night in silence. Neither of us spoke about what we'd seen, or the howl, or the stench that clung to us long after it faded. Words felt dangerous, like saying them out loud might summon it closer. The fire burned weak, a small circle of light swallowed by the towering black trees around us. Caleb sat with his back to the flames, staring into the dark like he expected something to step out at any second. I tried to eat, but every bite turned to ash in my mouth. My nerves wouldn't let me swallow. The forest was dead quiet again. No birds, no insects, no wind, just that heavy silence pressing down on us. Then came the first sound, a distinct crunching sound, leaves shifting under weight, heavy weight. Caleb's head snapped toward the noise, eyes wide. I gripped the flashlight but didn't turn it on. Not yet. Another step, closer, deliberate. The fire popped, and for a split second I swore I saw something massive move just beyond the tree line, a shape too tall, too wide to be anything I knew. The smell returned, stronger this time, like spoiled meat left out in the summer sun. It coated my tongue, made my stomach churn. Then, the breathing, slow, deep, ragged. It was standing just out of sight, no more than 20 feet away, pulling the night air into its lungs like it owned the forest. Caleb whispered, "Don't move." His voice trembled. I didn't. The steps came again, circling us. Branches cracked underfoot. Whatever it wasn't trying to be quiet anymore. It wanted us to know it was there. The firelight flickered, and in the shifting glow, I finally saw it. A face, just for a heartbeat, between the trees. Eyes glinting like wet stone, wide and unblinking. A mouth that hung slightly open, revealing teeth too large, too human to belong to any animal I'd ever seen. Its skin was dark, leathery beneath the tangled hair that draped its skull. And then it was gone, swallowed back into the dark. The footsteps retreated, but not far. We could still hear it pacing, circling, waiting. Neither of us slept that night. We sat by the fire until dawn, gripping whatever we could as weapons, praying the light would come before it decided to step out of the trees. But deep down, I knew it wasn't finished with us. It was hunting, and we were trapped in its mountains. Dawn brought no relief. The fire had burned down to ash, and Caleb and I sat in silence, hollow-eyed and stiff from sitting upright all night. I wanted to believe the creature had left, that maybe it had just been warning us. But when I looked at the ground beyond camp, all hope evaporated. Tracks, massive prints, sunk deep into the earth, circling our camp again and again, too wide, too long, with a stride that dwarfed any humans. Caleb crouched over them, his face pale, his lips trembling as he traced the outline of one with his hand. "Jesus," he muttered. "It was right here. It could have." He didn't finish the sentence. We didn't waste time. By mid-morning, we packed up and pushed down the mountain, our only thought to get out as fast as possible. But the woods had changed. The familiar ridges and valleys seemed twisted, wrong. Trails disappeared into tangles of undergrowth. Landmarks I swore we'd passed before were gone. It was as if the forest itself was shifting, leading us deeper instead of out. And all the while it followed. Sometimes we'd hear the knock of wood, sharp and taunting. Other times the heavy crash of something huge moving parallel to us, always staying just beyond sight. Once, when I stopped to drink, I caught the smell again, that rancid stench of decay, stronger than ever, rolling in from the trees. By late afternoon, we were lost. Caleb tried to mask it, studying his map and compass, but his shaking hands gave him away. When I asked, he finally snapped, "It's hurting us, don't you see? It doesn't want us gone. It wants us deeper." That night, we didn't bother with a fire. We huddled in the dark, clutching knives, trying not to breathe too loudly. The silence was unbearable, every second stretching like hours. Then came the scream, not a howl this time, a scream, high, guttural, filled with fury. It tore through the forest, so loud my bones vibrated. Caleb clamped his hands over his ears, eyes wide in terror. I just froze, every muscle in my body locked tight. The steps came next, running this time, crashing through the trees with terrifying speed. We bolted, no plan, no direction, just raw instinct. Branches whipped my face, thorns tore my arms, but I didn't stop. Behind us, the forest exploded with sound, wood snapping, earth shaking, that monstrous scream growing closer and closer. At one point, I risked a glance back. I wish I hadn't. It was there, charging through the trees, massive arms swinging, eyes burning in the dark. Its outline was monstrous, a towering shadow that moved with impossible speed. Every step shook the ground. I stumbled, nearly went down, but Caleb yanked me up and screamed, "Run!" His voice cracked with panic, but it cut through my fear enough to keep me moving. We tore downhill, the slope working against us, our legs burning, lungs on fire. Still, it gained. The smell engulfed us, thick and choking, as if the forest itself had turned rotten in its wake. And then, silence. No footsteps, no screams, nothing. I skidded to a stop, gasping, my heart hammering so hard it drowned out everything else. Caleb collapsed beside me, clutching his chest. The forest was still again, too still, and that's when I realized the truth. It wasn't chasing us to kill us. It was driving us deeper into its territory. We pushed on through the night, though I don't remember how long we ran. My legs ached, lungs burned, and every breath felt like knives in my chest. But fear kept me moving. Fear that if I stopped, even for a second, it would be there, stepping out of the trees to claim us. At some point, Caleb collapsed against a rock outcropping, gasping for air. I wanted to scream at him to get up, to keep moving, but I couldn't either. My body was breaking down. We sat there, backs pressed to the cold stone, listening. That's when we heard it. Not the scream this time, not the knocks, a whistle, low, drawn out, rising and falling in a pattern too deliberate to be the wind. It carried through the forest, circling us, coming from more than one direction. I looked at Caleb, and the fear on his face told me he heard it too. The trees shifted above us. Something moved, slow, heavy, and then it stepped into view. No shadows this time, no tricks of the dark. It was real, towering, broad, its matted hair brushing the branches overhead. Its chest heaved as it breathed, each exhale a rumble in the still night. Its eyes caught the moonlight, not glowing, but reflecting, like the eyes of a predator. It looked at us, not like an animal, not like a man, something in between. I couldn't move. My body was frozen, pinned by that gaze. Caleb clutched the knife in his hand, but it looked pitifully small compared to what stood before us. The creature tilted its head the way a curious dog might and took one step forward. The ground shook beneath its weight. The stench of it rolled over us, rancid, suffocating. Another step. My heart hammered so hard I thought my ribs would crack. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. It raised its arm. Massive, long, fingers ending in dark, cracked nails. For a moment I thought it was reaching for me, but instead, it struck the tree beside us. The sound split the night like thunder, wood splintering, bark flying. The force of it shook the ground, sent a jolt through my bones. Caleb yelped, falling back against the rock. The creature roared then, Not just a scream, but a roar that carried through the entire mountain. It wasn't warning us anymore. It was a claim, a declaration, and then it was gone. Vanished into the trees, the sound of its steps fading until there was nothing but silence. We didn't move until dawn. Couldn't. Our bodies locked in fear, our minds shattered by what we'd seen. When the sun finally rose, we stumbled down the mountain, half dead, half mad, until we found a dirt road and flagged down a passing truck. The driver looked at us like we'd crawled out of the grave. Maybe we had. To this day, I don't know why it let us live, why it chose to show itself and then leave. Maybe it wanted us to know the truth, that it's real, that the mountains don't belong to us, and that one day when the fire burns low and the silence grows heavy, it might come again. And so, the fire burns low as tonight's story comes to an end. The Appalachian Mountains remain behind us, but their shadows linger, vast, untamed, and hiding things we were never meant to see. Some who wander return with tales of glowing eyes in the tree line, footsteps heavier than any man's, and screams that don't belong to this world. Others don't return at all, but the campfire is never silent for long. There are more stories waiting, stories whispered across generations, carried in the wind, etched into the dark. Stories of things older, stranger, and far more dangerous than we care to admit. Next time, we'll follow another trail into the unknown. What waits there, no one can say for sure. But I can say this, be sure to bring a friend, because the fire will be lit, the night will be long, and something will always be listening.